A lot of our habitat work takes place in the winter. We do a variety of clearing willows to make sure that the reed beds keep open and remain as reed beds. We also coppice a lot of areas of willow so that you end up with a mosaic of different age structures, which is really good for habitat for birds. In the springtime we get the site ready for our grazing animals that come onto site for the summer, which are traditional breeds of cattle, including Highland cattle and sheep. These animals help to keep the meadows in a really good condition for our overwintering waders, which are an important part of the site. So we have to make sure all our fencing is secure because we don't want them escaping.
We talked earlier about different species of birds being here at different times of the year. Do you have to change what you do for the seasons?
So in the spring, birds are starting to think about nesting. So our scrapes are a really important habitat for the nesting ducks and waders. One of the most important things we need to think about is water level management, because the avocets, particularly when they come and nest here, like to nest right on the very edge of the water levels. So if the water levels then come up, their nest sites can be compromised. So we have to monitor the water levels very carefully throughout the nesting season.
You mentioned scrapes, Susan. What exactly are they?
So they're a man-made area with shallow water, and so that allow waders to feed in the shallow mud, and also quite a few islands within that habitat to create refuge for breeding birds and also roosting, overwintering birds as well in that area. So the whole area is actually protected with a predator fence to stop animals like foxes getting in and predating on the chicks and eggs on the islands.
So we've talked about the management, Susan. What would happen to the habitats and the birds that use them if we didn't do it?
So if we just left the whole area without managing it at all, the reed beds will become completely taken over with willow trees, which would dry out the habitat completely. It would be still a valuable habitat, but not an open reed bed like it is now. The open grazing meadows that we've got would also eventually be covered with scrub, and that wouldn't be able to be used for our overwintering waders that currently feed on the grasses and the soft mud that is within that habitat.
Thanks, Susan, that was really informative. Are you going to show us some water voles now?
Yeah, if you follow me this way.
So Susan, why have you brought us down here?
This is Walkway Pond, which is a really good habitat for our water voles. They're an aquatic mammal that very much sort of same size as a rat. So the water voles were reintroduced here in 2013 in conjunction with the South Downs National Park. So they helped us release several hundred water voles in the first year in 2013, and we've been monitoring their presence since then. So we monitor the water voles' presence by looking out for signs, either chewed vegetation. They have a specific way that they chew the plants at a sort of 45-degree angle, so you can look out for those areas, or they have little patches of latrines that show their territories, so we're literally looking for their poo. So we also set out floats, which are made out of little insulating things so they can float in the water, and they will also use those as latrines, so they're really easy to spot and for us to go back and check certain areas for their presence throughout through the summer months, which is when we do the monitoring.
So with water voles on site, Susan, is there anything specific you have to do in the management?
So the main thing is to try and keep their food plants thriving, so we're trying to keep areas of the reserve open. So they actually like eating over 200 different sorts of plant. So if we make sure that the willow doesn't overtake areas of open habitat, just providing plenty of water for them to live in.
So Susan, we've arrived at Meon Shore Hide, which overlooks the South Scrape, hoping to see some avocets.
Yeah, so the Meon Shore Hide does look over the South Scrape, which is a really popular hide for the bird watchers because there's so many birds in front of this hide. Hopefully we'll see some avocets, which arrived here about 2004.
So Susan, what are avocets and why are they here?
So Avocets are a black and white wading bird. They've got quite a distinctive upturned beak, which they use for feeding invertebrates in the mud. They've actually got blue legs as well. So yes, they came here approximately 2004 and they've been present here ever since. So the youngsters that are bred from here will actually come back to the same area to breed again, which means that our population is gradually growing and growing. Last year we had record numbers of Avocet here, so they've been very successful due to the controlled area with the predator fencing around it, which keeps them safe from foxes.
So you say we had record numbers of Avocets breeding last year. How do you monitor that?
So during the breeding season particularly, we monitor all the nest sites from the hide, counting how many chicks that we've got, which either hatch and then become successful and actually fledge. We count all the adult birds as well on a regular basis, so we can monitor how many we've actually got here. We've got loads of volunteers that help us do all the monitoring and counting, which is invaluable for us, for our management as well, to know what's going on with them.
So you mentioned earlier that the water levels are quite high at the moment. What happens if conditions aren't perfect for the Avocets to breed?
So the Avocets here are linked quite well with all the other Avocets along the Solent. There's other reserves where if the conditions aren't quite right here, the Avocets will move to another reserve instead. So you've got Needs or Lymington and Keyhaven, Hook with Warsash, and if the conditions aren't quite right here, they will move to another site or vice versa, so that throughout the season you end up with a lot of populations of birds mass moving to another reserve.
So what's your expectations for the Avocet populations in the future?
But we hope that the Avocet population will keep growing as the young will keep coming back to the same area where they were bred from, so with hope that the population will expand and linking in with the other reserves that are in the Solent as well.
Right then Susan, on to our next success story, Marsh harriers.
Yes, so we had Marsh harriers first time breeding here, which was the first in Hampshire in 2017, and we've had 10 young raised since then, which we're really excited about because it shows how well we're managing our reed bed and the general habitat in the valley.
How do you identify Marsh harriers, Susan?
So Marsh harriers are quite a large bird of prey. We're often seen gently flying over our reed beds and the willows. We've had up to 4 or 5 individuals recently, so we're hopeful maybe we might even get 2 nest sites this year. They do feed on water voles as well as other small chicks and other smaller birds, but water voles are probably one of their favourite snacks, which is why our water voles are so important in our whole habitat.
You say Marsh harrier numbers are recovering. What happened to them?
So one of the reasons was the Victorians in the late 1800s hunted a lot of birds of prey to extinction. There have been other problems as well.
Oh, of course, there was the pesticides in the late 50s, early 60s, which caused quite a drop in numbers.
But fortunately, a lot of the birds of prey are now recovering and are doing really well, especially in the Solent area.
With relatively low numbers, how do you monitor success?
So we can't get very close to the nest site because it's right in the middle of a reed bed and we don't want to disturb them. But what we do is get visitors to see and monitor behaviours like stick passes and food passes, and then we make a record of that and we can get an idea of where it is they're nesting and how successful they have been for one particular year.
So what's food passing?
So when the female is sat on the nest, she relies on the male doing the hunting. The male will fly over the nest and call out to the female. The female will fly up and they'll literally pass food to her so that she can still feed while she's sat on the nest.
Well, hopefully you've enjoyed the video and hopefully you'll come out and see the site as well. It's always a great place to visit, so please come and join us one day.